You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Eddie Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Monday, which means it is mental meltdown. It's mental
That
health.
seems appropriate for today.
Monday, December 2nd. We are in full swing Advent.
Yeah.
The holidays are upon us.
I love Advent.
Yes, me too. Happy New Year, by the way.
Oh, yes.
It is New Year. Did you make a New Year resolution for Advent?
Is that a thing in the church here?
I don't know.
I'm going to sing more hymns. How's that? Is that possible?
Is that possible? Well, since it is Advent, that means that Christmas is right around the corner and all the festivals, we're beginning the festival season all over again. But there are, it's Mental Health Monday, so that means we get to take a look at what do the holidays look like from a mental health perspective. And really looking forward to doing that. We're going to do that throughout the month of December with our mental health expert, Deaconess Heidi Goehmann, licensed clinical social worker. Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Time to check in with Deaconess Heidi Goehmann for Mental Health Mondays. Special holiday edition, I guess. Should we call it a special holiday edition for the next 4 Mondays?
Special Advent edition?
Advent. There you go. Good morning, Heidi.
Good morning.
Happy Mental Health Monday, as I almost called it, Mental Meltdown.
Mental meltdown.
It was either meltdown or like meth, and I was like, this is not where we want mental health to go, just so everyone's clear,
We do legal things.
So we have a variety of topics lined up for the month of December, leading up to the pinnacle of holidays, right? Christmas, both in the church year and also the just cultural holiday too. There are a lot of things that come with it as well. So we're going to look at a variety of things: environmental stressors, people in relationships, loss and life experience, and I have so much to do.
Oh, that's like all the time. Which means it's worse during this season.
So let's kick off with environmental stressors. What would be an environmental stressor?
Well, I think one thing that you mentioned is that Christmas is a really awesome church holiday. I mean, we celebrate the incarnation of the Savior of the world, like Jesus stepping into our lives instead of us trying to reach up to him. This is a huge thing. However, unlike Easter, Christmas holds with it this just hugeness in our culture that I think makes it really stressful. It's just not only do we celebrate the joy and the gift and all God has given us, the reality is there's a lot of expectation and stressors put onto us that are separated from the real joy that's in the season.
Mm-hmm. Oh, where do we find ourselves in this season that maybe we don't find ourselves very often in the rest of the year? A shopping mall comes to mind.
Oh, I was going to say, right? Are you lost? You can't find yourself?
I mean, maybe that too. But
that's for another episode, Andy. Another episode. I think that those places and spaces, everything feels so busy. Everything feels overwhelming to our senses, and our sensory system is very unique to each of us. And the things that stress us out are always related to something going inside our body. Is it too loud? Is it too bright? Is it too, fill in the blank? And then couple that with, some stress that we just normally have in life that even might be good stress. Like I need to buy presents for all the people that I love and I enjoy doing that. You can enjoy all of that. But when you put on those other layers where it just kind of pokes and pricks at our body, it can be really overwhelming. And I, for one, I cannot deal with them all. And I know that for myself. I will do the outdoor shopping plazas instead, or there's this really cool thing called the internet where I buy things and they bring them to my house. So that's an option too. And I think knowing our limits with those things is really helpful. Knowing, what our day looks like and not adding more to it, but opening the door for how else could I do this thing that feels overwhelming, feels like a burden. And just being really aware of those spaces. So when you go out, maybe it's not the mall. Maybe it's your office work party that's whoa, I don't know how I feel about this. Internally, when you step into that space, I just encourage people this holiday season, kind of pay attention to what's going on inside of you, in your mind, in your heart, in your body, and and just notice it, just notice what really pricks at you. And then kind of think of some ideas, 2 or 3 brainstormed ideas of how you might work around that or enter into it for a shorter period of time. We have a lot of options. And I think sometimes we just think we have to do what we have to do. And that might be true, but we don't have to do the full experience of all of that. We do have some options within that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and depending on your personality type too, you're going to react to these external environment stressors in different ways, and understanding that is going to be a helpful coping mechanism moving through the season, so that you're not completely burned out by the time you actually get to Christmas Day and into the 12 days of Christmas as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the questions that come to mind for me are, what do I need? What do I want? And what is realistic? As well as, where's the grace? Like all of those questions need to be addressed. And I think that juggling them in the air is a really good mental health practice. Giving them some time and space, maybe using a journal, sitting in front of those really restful Christmas tree lights and contemplating, what do I need? What do I want? What's realistic? And where's the grace in that? And I think what happens a lot of times is we get to the end, like, where's the grace? And we're like, oh, I forgot about grace. I forgot that that's a gift that God gives me, not just in Jesus died and rose for me, but in my daily life. He brings grace into it. And how and where do I see that?
Mm-hmm. Sanctifies this daily life with his good gifts. We were talking about environmental stressors, and okay, first of all, we were talking about shopping malls. And I don't know if either of you have been to a shopping mall recently.
I avoid them very strategically.
Have you been?
Yeah.
Heidi,
I have a friend that starts with capital A, and I'm not going to, advertise for them. But I don't go to malls. I just don't do it.
Okay, so it's clear that neither of you have been to a mall because they're not as crowded as they once were.
Because we're all avoiding them.
Because we're all avoiding them. And they're like 30% empty.
That's true.
The spaces, the retail spaces are like 30% empty.
Yeah.
Or I'm speaking anecdotally. I don't know if they're legit
thing now.
Stats there, but
I have such fond quote unquote memories of childhood. Like, that was the thing. We would go to the mall and we would spend like 3 hours, and I would be so tired and exhausted, and as like a 12 or 13-year-old.
So here's a fun environmental stressor that comes to mind for me, and I'm curious if it is for anyone else here. So one of the things I look forward to in the holidays are, like, and I think many of us do, the good smells that come with the holidays, food, Christmas
Cinnamon.
tree, things like that. But there are things, there can be too much of a good thing. And sometimes what was intended to be a good smell is a little over the top.
Yeah. Right.
Have you experienced that? Where, like...
Yeah. I mean, I like your awareness of that, Andy, too, because I think that smell is a sense that we don't think of very often related to our mental health. I think we can kind of think of touch, and some of these more obvious ones, but smell really does not only overwhelm us. And the reality is we're interconnected inside of ourselves. Like, God created our brains, he created our neurological system, and he made it connected. And that's such a cool thing. But that also means that when we're accosted by a smell that is too much of a good thing, then the rest of us has to compensate. We're like, oh, now all the thoughts that I was having about how to organize myself or where I need to be when and stuff, then, it kind of all downward spirals, if you will, because of one instigator. And so being aware of what those things are for you is really important. And I'll speak a little bit to the young moms, trying to bring small children, and the young fathers trying to bring small children to a midweek worship service that is during baby's bedtime. That is, for me, one of the hugest holiday stressors on me for years and years. And I had to get to the place, I was raised Lutheran most of my life. And I really was taught, you show up to church and you show up to midweek services, and that's somewhat what you do. And we weren't always real faithful, but that was the expectation, at least. And so for me not to show up, and my husband's a pastor, I forgot to mention that too. So for me not to show up to midweek service would be that's ridiculous. You can't do that. And so where's the grace is the question. Where is the grace in that? It was completely missing. And so I had to get to a place where I was allowing myself to leave early if I needed to engage in what I could engage in. And if I needed to step out, that was fine. I was allowed to go sit in a rocking chair in the cry room and not ever enter the sanctuary, but enjoy the service that way. I was also allowed to miss a Wednesday. We do not believe that that's sinful in our church. And that's a beautiful gift of Lutheranism. And so wrestling with those things, there's not a one right way. And I don't want to get a lot of emails from pastors saying you just told people not to go to church, but knowing that there's a place for grace as well as our need to contemplate the season, show up and spend time, in worship together and engage in that process too. That's really important. What's the stressors for you and how can you find some grace in that?
So in our families, how do we support each other, especially as couples who are trying to do Christmas shopping or families with people who have different stressors and who react to stressors in different ways? How do we support each other and find that grace in those relationships when there's so many stressors happening and we can get triggered? I'm going to say triggered much easier during this season. How do we support each other?
Yeah, I think knowing each other and being vulnerable about that, stating, having that awareness in ourselves, our spouse can't find it for us. We want them to mind read. It's never going to happen. God didn't create us that way. And so being aware for ourselves and then saying, okay, so this is a big issue for me. This is hard for me. Is there any way we can share this burden? Being upfront about what we need goes really far in marriage. And then our spouse on the return, they can say, hey, is there anything you need? Is there anything that's stressful for you in this holiday season? And asking those questions, having the conversations. And then again, just in that relationship, having a lot of grace. If I snip at you, being a little more gracious in this season to bring forgiveness into that as well.
And that's a good segue into next week's conversation when we get to talk about people and relationships during the holidays. It's we do spend a lot more time around. Typically, we spend more time around people maybe we only see at the holidays, relatives or those. So we'll talk about that next week. I was thinking of one other I was trying to think of one more environmental stressor, and I think food might be one of those environmental stressors too. But that's probably a 2-hour episode right there.
Especially if you have food allergies.
Or a relationship with food that's strained. That sort of thing. So. But now we're all out of time, so we'll have to schedule that one for another time. Maybe that's our New Year's series.
There you go.
Mental Health Mondays with Deaconess Heidi. Thank you so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour this morning.
Thanks for having me.